Oh, yeah. I still have a lot of stuff. Okay, happy birthday. I don't even know what starts. Rest. Okay. Birthday officially sign off. Yeah.
This time I'd like to call the February 24th, 2025 meeting of the Eatonton Town Council to order. Chairman Kirby.
I would like to likewise call the Board of Commissioners of Chowan County meeting to order.
And at this time, the council would like to conduct a roll call of its members.
Please, Madam Clerk.
Present are Commissioner Tony Schaefer, Commissioner Ellis Marks, Commissioner Trey Taylor, Commissioner Chris Evans, County Attorney Martin Arizona Womble, Commissioner Vice Chairman Larry McLaughlin, Chairman Bob Kirby, and County Manager Kevin Howard.
And I'll do the same for the town. We've got Town Manager Corey Gooden present, along with council members Aaron Costin, Craig Miller, Bob Turner, Patrick Sellers, Sam Dixon, our county attorney Hood Ellis, and also Mayor Pro Tem Elton Bond. Before we proceed to the agenda, I would like to make some comments regarding tonight's meeting. As most of you know, on November 25th of last year, the town of Eatonton and Chowan County entered into a memorandum of understanding regarding the Confederate monument. Under the terms of that memorandum, the town agreed to relocate the Confederate monument to an area between the Chowan County Detention Center and the existing Veterans Memorial within 30 days of the entry of a consent judgment resolving the lawsuit captioned as United Daughters of the Confederacy versus the town of Eatonton, in which senior resident Superior Court Judge Jerry Tillett had entered a restraining order prohibiting the town from relocating the monument pending further hearing by the court. Prior to the entry of that memorandum, the town attorney shared the memorandum of understanding with the attorney of record for the plaintiffs in the United Daughters case. And that attorney advised the town attorney that he and the plaintiffs agreed with the relocation, the provisions of the memorandum of understanding between the county and the town, and that he, as attorney for the plaintiffs, would sign the consent judgment ending the lawsuit and thereby enabling the town to relocate the monument as agreed upon with the county in the memorandum of understanding. After the town and the county formally entered the memorandum of understanding on November 25th, 2024, a new attorney for one of the three plaintiffs filed a notice of appearance in the case and indicated that he and his client, the sons of Confederate veterans, did not agree with the proposed consent judgment and would not sign the consent judgment. The execution of the consent judgment by all of the plaintiffs and the final resolution of the monument lawsuit against the town was an express condition of the memorandum of understanding. And since that condition has not been met, and since that condition cannot be met, the town and county cannot move forward with the previous memorandum of understanding, which was entered back on November 25th of 2024. Since then, and on January 3rd, 2025, the town and each council member and the county and each member of the County Board of Commissioners have been sued by 5 local residents represented by the Southern Coalition for Social Justice, asserting multiple claims. But of interest tonight is their objection to relocating the monument to the county property between the detention center and Veterans Memorial. In deference to the complaint that these citizens and others did not get an opportunity to be heard before the town and county entered the previous memorandum of understanding, we have decided to include a public hearing on tonight's agenda. The town council and the board of commissioners will start the meeting by formally terminating the November 25th, 24 memorandum of understanding, and will then conduct a public hearing on whether to enter a new memorandum of understanding. As I believe each of you who've spoken to us publicly on this matter in the past have always done, we will encourage and maintain civility in our comments. We will allow people to speak without being interrupted, and we will allow them to speak without comments from the crowd, without noises and other things that would serve to interrupt the particular speaker. So we will enforce that. Another thing that we will be enforcing is that, as our procedures call for, each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Chairman Kirby.
I do have some introductory remarks as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In late May of 2022, the county became aware that the Town Council of Edenton approved a resolution to transfer ownership of the Confederate monument to Chowan County. Prior to the May 2022 resolutions, Chowan County had not previously engaged in discussions to accept the monument. Following the town's resolution in 2022, the county did not engage regarding the transfer of ownership due to concerns of ownership and potential litigation related thereto. The town was subsequently sued by the United Daughters of the Confederacy, the North Carolina divisions of the Sons of Confederate Veterans, and the Colonel William F. Martin Camp 1521 of the Sons of Confederate Veterans. That lawsuit remains pending. In 2024, individual members of the Town Council and County Board of Commissioners and citizens of both the town and county sought to revisit the county's willingness to accept ownership of the monument, as there was continued litigation, protests, and disruption in town business as a result of issues related to the monument. On November the 25th, 2024, the memorandum of understanding considered and approved by both the Town Council and the Board of Commissioners contained a provision that the litigation referenced as United Daughters of the Confederacy v. Town of Edenton was resolved by a consent order. On February 3rd, 2025, the county received a letter from the Town of Edenton advising this condition precedent could not be met, and therefore the November 24th, 2024 memorandum of understanding had failed. The town asked if the Board of Commissioners would be interested in another joint meeting to discuss entering a new memorandum of understanding. This is what leads us here tonight. In light of that first matter of business is a vote to memorialize the termination of the November 25th, 2024 memorandum of understanding. So now that's where we are, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Chairman Kirby. And that is the next agenda item that we have before us. As Mr. Kirby previously stated, and as I previously stated, the underlying condition of the consent judgment is not going to be accomplished, and therefore we cannot carry out the terms of the previous memorandum of understanding. So now it is proper for us to consider a vote to terminate the memorandum of understanding that was entered into November 25th of 2024. I address my town council when I say this. Do we have a motion and second? And we'll follow up with any discussion after we have a motion and second to terminate the previous memorandum of understanding that was entered into November 25th of 2024.
So moved.
Okay, we've got a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Bond, is that correct? And who made
I'll
the
second it.
And Councilman Aaron Costin made the second. Is there any discussion that needs to be had among our council? Okay, all of those in favor of terminating the memorandum of understanding, which was entered November 25th, 2024, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And for the record, any opposed?
Now for the Chowan County Board of Commissioners, and Madam Clerk, let the record show that Commissioner Cummings is here, please. It would be in order for a motion to terminate the existing memorandum of understanding.
I'm going to terminate.
Motion by Commissioner McLaughlin. Our rules are a little bit different. We don't do seconds. We just do it with a straight up motion. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand.
That was unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Kirby.
Yep.
The next agenda item is the public hearing. Remember my words earlier regarding the rules that we're going to follow. I have a list of people that have signed up. I will call you in the order in which you signed up, and for the record and for others present, they don't have what I have here in front of me, but so please, before you begin your remarks, state your name and your address. Our first person that signed up is Michael Dean. Mr. Dean.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Hope you're having a good evening. I'm Michael Dean, Commander, Eaton Bell Battery, Sons of Confederate Veterans. We do and we don't have a dog in this hunt. And I'd like to read this prepared statement I have for you. Not representing myself, but the Eaton Bell Battery as Commander and representing about 600 veterans, 600 visitors in our petition to keep the memorial here. We previously gave the town council a list of 400 signatures, and we have about 200 more to add to that. In regard to the letter provided dated February 15th, 1960, from Ms. Elliott to County Commissioner Peel, this step, removing the memorial, is most important to beautify the town. She refers to the new location as being a place where it can be revered alone. She mentions how it will be seen at some distance down Broad Street. She also mentions history tourism as being among the largest assets for the town. Seems like nothing's changed in about 65 years, because the last I recall, the town took in $27 million in tourism income. We previously provided a copy of the petition to leave the memorial in place for about 400 signatures. And like I say, we had another 200 to add to that. Nobody in the Eaton Bell Battery has expressed a desire to see the memorial moved, as the proposed location is not seen as an equal or greater importance due to the visibility issues. Some officials privately have stated the Veterans Park behind the county courthouse is arguably of equal importance. Key word here is arguably. We appreciate the work the county commissioners have done on this in good faith and with good intentions. In recent letters from the SCV North Carolina Division Commander Kevin Stone on February 9th and Mr. James Wilson, attorney for the North Carolina Division of Sons of Confederate Veterans, on January the 8th, to the commissioners and town council, the issue of standing has been omitted from the agreement. According to them, this standing is a simple matter made in good faith, but the town has been unwilling to include it, and it has not been reported as such in the media. At least one media source. So the question is the town council willing to concede this minor point and move on, or drag this out for years to come through the appeals process? Thank you for your time. And if you'll excuse me, I have a Bill Battery meeting tonight, and we have a special speaker coming to talk about the lost colony of Roanoke Island. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Next on our list is Millard Bond.
Now, I know y'all think I'm here to create problems, but I just wanted to tell the town that there's a lot of people in this room that their mothers were on the women's club that had the monument moved from the green in front of the old courthouse to the end of Broad Street because they thought it would be more appealing. Well, the town of Edenton refused to pay 1 cent towards moving the monument from the courthouse green to the end of Broad Street. The the women's club had to raise all the money themselves to have the monument moved. Now, they still fought the town regarding moving it because they still didn't want it moved, but they finally got all the town councilmen and the county commissioners to come around and let them move the monument. It's a shame that all these women are now gone and we've got another generation taking over to change things in Eatonton. It's a shame that this little town has had to put up with outsiders coming in here and wanting to change everything to suit them. Eatonton was a nice place to live when they came here, and it'll be a nice place to live when they leave. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. Next on our list is Bill Paul. Mr. Paul.
Good evening. The main question, I'm a member of the Bill
Mr.
Bavard
Paul,
Sons.
Could you tell us where you're from?
I'm sorry, Mary Hill,
Thank you.
member of the Eatonton Bill Bavard.
Thank
you. And I've been searching for a conclusion on why this monument is so important to be moved. Hardly anyone in here would want the tombstones or grave markers of their ancestors moved from one location to another ultimately. And it appears that the folks who are opposing the current location aren't going to be happy with any location. So that leads me to question is, what do they really want? Is it movement or destruction? And my mind tells me it's destruction. If they won't accept any form of agreement to let it sit where it is or to move it to another location. And secondly, I wonder if whatever happens to the monument, if it disappears, goes, is destroyed, what are we going to do with the cannons down around the Barker House? If it's Civil War objections that we see with the monument, what about the cannons? Are they not just as objectionable? If anybody could answer that for me, I'd certainly appreciate the clarification. So really, if the statue is done away with, the monument, what will be next? The cannons? And then what goes after the cannons? The Barker House? Anything that was constructed with enslaved labor in the town of Eatonton? Is that ultimately what we're looking for? My suggestion is to let history be history, learn from it, appreciate it for what it is, and I'm sure things will change in the future to add things that we don't want to see or don't like. But anyway, that's my conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. The next registered speaker is Henry Burdick.
My name is Henry Burdick. I live at Wharf Landing. I moved to Eatonton in 2009, so I'm not a native, but I didn't just wash ashore either. The Sons of the Confederacy have been spreading a falsehood. They claim, and it's an erroneous claim, that Confederate veterans should be considered as the same as United States veterans, and that is not true. The Confederates fought the Confederate Army for the Confederacy against the United States of America. They are not considered United States veterans. That's a fact. You can look it up. Now, in 1958, Congress passed a law that provided pensions for the then living Civil War widows of Confederate soldiers. The legislation that was passed specifically says that this is just for these widows. It did not justify claiming that the Confederates are U.S. citizens. Now, the proposed location near the Veterans Memorial Park, in close proximity, in fact, it's just going to be a matter of feet away from the Veterans Memorial Park, is a in my opinion, a problem. If you go to the Veterans Memorial Park, there are 5 memorials for the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, and the Coast Guard. And in the center of the configuration, there's what I'll call a headstone that says that the monument is dedicated to the honor and sacrifice of men and women who served the United States our country in war and peace. So that's the theme of that Veterans Memorial. And the memorials in the center there, they've got a single flagpole with the American flag. Now, your proposal is to put this Confederate monument a matter of feet from that. A matter of feet. Now, the thing is, the monument is, the Confederate monument is 29 feet tall. Each one of these memorials for the Army, the Air Force, and so on is about 4 feet tall. So if you stack them end on end, they're not going to be as big, as apparent, as noticeable, as important, and so on as the Confederate monument. And I'm a veteran, served 6 years in the Army National Guard, and speaking not for myself, but on behalf of the veterans who are memorialized at the Veterans Memorial Park, I think it's going to be an insult, a shame, a dishonor to have a Confederate monument overshadowing by a big amount the memorials for the people who served, and some of whom served and gave the last full measure for our country. So I'm opposed to the proposed location for the monument. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Byrd. Next on our list, we have Kathy Miller. Ms. Miller?
Good evening. My name is Kathy Miller, and I live on Old Fish Hatchery Road, Edenton. I was born and raised in Richmond, Virginia, capital of the Confederacy. I remember going to the Civil War Centennial in Richmond, downtown, in the 1960s with my Girl Scout troop. I never thought about what a disaster it would have been if we had won the war and the South became a separate nation. I never thought about the Robert E. Lee Monument on Monument Avenue, which I passed often. I didn't think about how it represented a war fought to preserve slavery. I knew slavery was bad, but I didn't think about how slavery was literally torture, child abuse, and rape. Perhaps some of you are like me. Perhaps you never really thought about the monument. Perhaps we need to rethink this statue, this monument to slavery. While we do our soul searching and praying, let's put the monument into storage. Let's get this symbol of torture and rape out of our beautiful town. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Joe Hollowell. Mr. Hollowell.
Mr. Chairman, Council, Mr. Commission Chairman, Commissioner. Yeah, well, thank you for letting us come and share tonight with you. I'd just like to say, my family moved to Chowan County in 1609. That's 335 years ago. Believe it or not, Mr. Chairman, I've been here 25% of those years. I didn't realize it. I started looking at the numbers. I said, dead blank. I'd like to say that I hear comments and I sort of change what I was going to say. North Carolina is part of the United States of America. There's no question about that.
And my forefathers and all of our forefathers that took that stand, it was for a way of life. Part of that way of life was slavery, and it should never, abominable. It just so happens we have more slaves in the world today than we had back then, and we all need to take our efforts and try to get that taken care of. That was a disgrace to the South and to the country as a total. And we are sorry for it. Should never have happened. But you know, having that statue, and I'm convinced of it, reminds me, when I see it, it reminds me of a history. And that's an important word, we tend to forget it, but it reminds me of a history that we never want to live again. You can believe it. We never want human race to go back where one people sell other people as property and as chattel. And that's why I'm saying we need that monument to stay alive. Now, the first decision was to send it back to Beaver Hill Cemetery. Okay, hey man, that's really obscure. Second was to go, what was the second? We didn't really, out of here at Hollowell Park. Down here at Taste of Freedom. Come on. Let's talk about something else. We have a memorial park to servicemen of Chowan County that died for their country. The Civil War was a war we wish had never been fought, but those people were dying for what they believed in, and they were part of citizens of this state, and we have a memorial for them, and it should be located in the memorial park along with the rest of the soldiers and people from Chowan County that gave their life. Thank y'all for reconsidering this. I appreciate it. It's time to get this issue over with and get back to the business of promoting Chowan County. And I will walk with you anywhere you want to walk to fight slavery. If any of you know my family, it's just a shame. I will say this. I've been authorized by Ed Phillips and Scott Curry to tell the commissioners and council this, that the UDC and Count Martin will support your decision with the MOU with modifications 100%. They called me today and told me to pass that on to you. Thank you for letting me come before you.
Thank you, Mr. Holland. Next is Alex Keyes.
Well, good evening, ladies, gentlemen. My name is Alex Keyes. I live at 2333 Locust Grove Road. Permit me to read. On my occasional visits to our nation's capital, I usually make a pilgrimage to our Vietnam Memorial, Panel 7W, line 109. There, as I looked at the engraved John Winburn, I remember, reflect, and grieve. Johnny Winburn is the only man I knew personally who died in Vietnam. A terrible war, misguided both politically and militarily. A war that divided our nation, a war we did not win. No celebration here, no glorification, just grief and a sober reflection on the cost of war. In April of 2022, my daughter and I traveled to Normandy, France. We visited the American Military Cemetery, seen by most of you in the movie Saving Private Ryan, another site of sober reflection and grief. Next, we visited the nearby German military cemetery. I find it remarkable that the French government has permitted the burial of German soldiers in French soil and legislated the protection of that graveyard. Could there be a more violent or repulsive ideology than that which motivated Nazi Germany? The atrocities committed against the citizens of France were terrible both in number and horror. Yet the French both allow and protect a German military cemetery. I cannot help but contrast the attitude of the French to that of our recent civil rights reenactors, who with remarkable self-righteousness use billboards to label our community as racist and call for the removal of the memorial to the Confederate war dead. The thought that the memorial glorifies war is as ludicrous as it is insulting. Normandy, France, Washington, D.C., Edenton, North Carolina, all are places with memorials to remember and grieve the deaths of young men sent by their countries to die in battle. None of the deaths glorious. If there's any death which we should celebrate, it is the death of Jim Crow. Thankfully, we as a nation, as a state and a county and town, albeit slowly, have moved on. Unfortunately, the present efforts to remove a monument to the Civil War dead only serve to elicit Jim Crow's resurrection. Slavery, Civil War, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, civil rights are all episodes in our history. We must be knowledgeable about these eras. The monument can be a reminder and stimulus to study all these elements of our history.
Thank you, Dr. Gibbs. Next, we've got John Shannon. Dr. Shannon.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Shannon, and I'm the pastor of Providence Missionary Baptist Church in Edenton. I've been serving that church for 19 years and 10 months. And also I'm here as a Vietnam veteran and as a Black citizen of this country, and a former member of the Human Relations Commission of this town of Edenton. I'm here tonight to voice my opinion about the Confederate Monument. As a former member of the Human Relations Commission, we did our due diligence, investigating and researching one of several issues that we took on to enhance the relationships of the people here in this town. And we was looking to help eradicate racism and division that we see in the town. And we came up with a recommendation for the town's council for their consideration that we thought that would help improve the relationships and help change the image that's portrayed in this town.
Right.
We researched, inquired, and went over the history of the Confederate monuments, what they symbolized in the late 1800s and the early 1900s in this town and across this country. And we also looked at what they stand for or symbolize to so many different people today. After 14 months of reflection, we, the Human Resource Commission of this town, we recommended by majority vote to the town council to relocate the monument from the foot of Broad Street to some other site. We didn't recommend where, but we did suggest that they would relocate it somewhere other than where it's sitting. As of right now, every attempt to move the monument has been delayed, redirected, or ignored. As a former member of the Human Resource Commission, as a former Vietnam veteran, and as a Black citizen and religious leader in this community, I hope that one day soon, that the recommendation from the Human Resource Commission would be considered as a move in the right direction to better the relationships of all the citizens in Edenton, and that it would be a shining example to the rest of the world what progression looks like in the 21st century. I think it's past time for our elected leaders, clergy, educators, and our business leaders to come together that we might bring this community together and be an example around the world. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Deborah Miller.
Hi, I'm Deborah Miller, Edenton resident, born in Massachusetts. Before moving here at age 8, my mother was threatened with a cross burn because we were selling our home to a Black family. After moving to Edenton, my parents received an invitation to join the KKK. They declined. I call both these situations white supremacy I would hope you would too. In 2024, I asked Town Council the reason the statue was moved to Broad Street in 1961. Not receiving an answer, I've been left to believe the answers received from some Edentonians, which first one was as a reminder to blacks to know their place. Then by the placement of the statue facing north, Yankees go home. Between these explanations and timing of the statue's move during the racial unrest of the 60s, again I ask, white supremacy? Edenton's population is majority black, but the non-majority keeps this totally disrespectful and demeaning statue near a children's playground in front of our town council meeting place, and now they want to move it to the courthouse and Veterans Memorial. Again, I ask, white supremacy? It's a shame our town council, mayor, and county commissioners have not heard the vulgar words of the pro-monument group during protest. To witness its citizens being called communist, fascist, in words I'll respectfully not repeat. To see its local citizens riding by, shooting the bird, and shouting, "Go home," to those who want the statue to be removed. To see a prominent citizen chasing and screaming after two women carrying "Remove the Monument" signs over by the pupil house on a public sidewalk. Yes, this is during the Tea Party celebration. Ironically, a Tea Party celebration of past Edenton women fighting for their rights. All of this as a pro-monument protester, sign in hand, stood on the corner of the pupil house for a lot longer than that few-minute walk those women took. No word shouted at him. Again, I'll ask, white supremacy? If knowing in 2025, after 58 years of living here, I'd be speaking on such a horrific topic, it would take me more than 3 minutes to say all I've seen and heard. Cannot understand a community that brags so much on itself, how you can openly disrespect any of its people with such a known symbol of white supremacy, do so many things behind closed doors. It is a beautiful town, but with all of the above, would you feel welcome and comfortable? Please look into your hearts and do the respectable and honorable thing. Remove the statue. Thank you.
There's Rod Phillips. Mr. Phillips.
Thank you. I'm Rod Phillips. I live in Village Creek in Edenton. So I pay both town and county taxes, and I think that gives me ample license to speak here tonight. There are two words we hear a lot when we're talking about Confederate monuments: heritage and history. I'm going to give you a little bit of my personal history. I spent several years in my youth on a farm in Johnson County here in North Carolina. This is early to mid-50s. And initially, we didn't have running water. We had electricity, but all of our water came out of a hand pump on the back porch. And our bathroom was a wooden structure built over a big hole in the ground, about 100 feet behind the house. Now, at some point, my dad did have indoor plumbing installed and a bathroom added on. And soon after that, he knocked down that small wooden building and he filled in the hole. Now, that outhouse was part of his history. It was part of his heritage, actually, you could say, because that's what he grew up with, as had his parents and his grandparents. So my point is, not everything that's old is worth saving, and not all history should be worshipped. My dad was glad to leave that heritage behind. You know, white hoods are part of the history here, but we don't have a white hood and a glass case at a public library. Burned crosses are part of our history, but we don't have a burned cross standing out in front of our town hall. Sometimes it's best to just leave some things behind. Now, Chowan County has got along very well so far without owning a Confederate monument. Why do we need one now? There's a group in North Carolina that's dedicated to the removal of Confederate monuments, county courthouses. The guys at the front of the room here know this. They know that an attempt to install a Confederate monument at our courthouse is going to be challenged in court. They know this. And their attitude seems to be, bring it on. The town might pay for moving this monument, but it will not be paying for the county's legal bills as it fight to hang on to it. What some of the people holding this hearing are trying to do is score a personal victory in the ongoing culture wars, not solve a problem. They want to score one for their side, and they want us taxpayers to pay for it, and we need better than that.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips.
Yep.
Next, Ronnie Smith. Mr. Smith.
Good evening. I'm Ronnie Smith. I was born in Mississippi in the early 50s and was raised in Alabama. However, my family and I have been residents of Edenton for over 33 years. I am a Navy veteran and I'm a retired federal employee. Currently, I am a member of the Move the Monument Coalition. The Confederate monument represents a time of slavery, Black peoples, a time of war, fought to perpetuate the ownership of our fellow man, time of hatred, a time of denying equal rights and dignity. The monument has no place here in our town or county for the public, our community, to be reminded of those times or to glorify those times. On behalf of my family, my children, my grandchildren, and future generations, I respectfully ask that this group of officials show compassion for your fellow neighbors, your friends, and your community members, and remove the monument. Denounce this symbol of division and hatred in our community. As the philosopher Henry David Thoreau said, it is never too late to give up your prejudices. It is never too late for Edenton to give up hers. The opportunity to do so is now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Stella Brothers. Stella.
Good evening to everyone. Protocol has already been established. My name is Stella Brothers. I was born and raised in this county for almost 68 years now. I have seen prejudice. I have seen hatred. I have seen love and caring for the citizens of this county. When I completed the application, interviewed, and was chosen to be a part of the Human Relations Commission, the first thing I did was concentrated on the mission statement. And that was to strengthen our community by promoting racial through activities and policy that foster mutual respect, inclusiveness, harmony among all of our citizens. We had 12-member commission, half to represent the African-American community. We were given a task. We completed the task, even though it took almost 2.5 years, because we looked at the objectives. We even came up with 22 initiatives that were suggested by the members. The first instructor culture initiative was to start with the monument, the statue. We did our part. We voted 7-6 to relocate the statue. We didn't say destroy it. We didn't say where to put it. Suggestion was offered, but the main thing was to remove it. It was passed back to the town of Edenton Council for their approval, and it was passed. Now when we go back, then you all went back into a private session with the county commissioners, someone that didn't want anything to do with it or ownership for to relocate the statue. You did without the human relation or the public concern or the comments. I feel like part of the coalition downtown with the monument I felt like it just was wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Next speaker is Alan Smithers. Alan.
Good evening, Alan Smithers, live here in Edenton. So the statue has a large embossed Confederate flag on the front of it. It has CSA, for Confederate States of America. It has the word Confederate engraved on the statue. It is obviously a Confederate monument. It's a monument to the Confederacy. And we all know that 11 states seceded from the Union. And as part of seceding from the Union, they had 11 states seceded from the Union, and they stated that slavery would be protected for all Confederate states and any new ones as part of westward expansion. The monument is not only a memorial to the Confederacy, it's a memorial to the protection of slavery. In 2021, after George Floyd was murdered, the town council, along with the HRC Human Relations Commission, published a vision around Edenton being more inclusive and equitable. And 4 years later, we're looking to move the monument up to the courthouse. How does that really align with the vision of the town being inclusive and equitable? Courthouses are about justice, equality, rule of law. A statue is about, the Confederate statue is about white supremacy. It's about oppression. It seems like we are, the town is really focused on this one solution of moving the statue over to the town or from the town to the county. Could it look at other options as far as putting the statue in storage, potentially giving it back to the United Daughters of the Confederacy? I think Mr. Kirby mentioned that it was like a car without a title. I haven't heard why the statue could be given back to the UDC. They could do whatever they want to do with the statue. And I think there was an offer to do to give the town $50,000. I'm not sure if that was well vetted to understand exactly whether that was possible to actually sell the statue. So in summary, I'd recommend vetting out additional alternatives, but not really going with moving the statue to the courthouse. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next on our list is Jim Retzky.
My name is Jim Redsky. Moved here about a little under 4 years ago. Not from the South, from Chicago originally, lived in Tennessee. I think people accuse me of being a racist. I know I'm from Chicago because I wear cowboy boots or eat collard greens. And if anybody knows who my wife is, she's no, I'm not a racist. Anyways, what we do is we give certified biblical counseling to veterans, active duty, military, first responders, and their family members that have been challenged by the consequences of war. Every type of addiction you can think of, bereavement, varieties. We deal with a lot of issues with people that have been let down by the federal government. We walked into this town, we saw that statue. I praise God about where we were and how far this country has come. And to me, it was a symbol for us to reflect and be thankful for how God has led us out of that nightmare that was called slavery. We see all kinds of examples of revisionism in this country. You give an inch, people take a mile. We took God's Ten Commandments out of our schools? What kind of condition is our schools in right now? How did that serve our children? I believe the statue should stand. And one of the primary reasons is because it reminds us, once again, who we were and how far we've come. You need one more example. You look at the state of our theological seminaries in our churches. You look at the compromises that have been led in. I challenge anybody to show me in God's word where we have 70+ different genders in God's word. That's a slippery slope. I'll stand against slavery for the rest of my life. I've got friends from every walk of life, every color. We have 150 certified biblical counselors on our team that are trained to help people that have been failed by secular psychology. And they're from every ethnic group you can think of. So that's all I've said.
Thank you, Mr. Redskins. Our next speaker is Karen Maston. Karen.
Hello, I'm Karen Maston. I live on Granville Street. The prettiest small town in the South should not have a monument that was erected and later moved to its present location to affirm a racist ideology. The only logical move now is into storage while you sort out the lawsuits and decide where it should fairly go. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Angela Sykes. Angela.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Angela Sykes. I live here in town at Eatonton. A couple of years ago, thanks to a video online about a sweet, welcoming little town in eastern North Carolina, I drove 2 hours from home at my home in Wake Forest to come and check out Eatonton. I grew up in Raleigh and had never been here before. Not long after my first visit, where I met a local realtor, who basically introduced me to everyone in town, I fell in love with Eatonton. I soon put an offer in on a house that took me 6 months to purchase, a year to restore, and now I have a lovely home in downtown Eatonton. After 2 more years of working on purchasing the house next to me, I will soon finish restoring it. One of the things I learned in the video was that the town council had voted to remove the Confederate statue from its beautiful waterfront. That let me know that there were like-minded people here. Otherwise, I never would have hopped in the car and driven here, much less purchased a home in Eatonton. Since I moved here a couple of years ago, the statue remains. Also, since I moved here a couple of years ago, I've had no less than 30 visitors, and all but 3 have commented on how horrible the statue is at our waterfront. Also, since I moved here, having never been to Eatonton before, I found at least 2 lines of ancestry who lived in Chowan and Bertie counties in the 1700s. And the one who owned property in Chowan County also owned people in Chowan County. It's part of my story. I consider it an awful part of my story. Additionally, I have several ancestors who were Confederates and who fought to continue to own people. As Maya Angelou said, when we know better, we do better. I would like to be a part of changing my family's history here in Chowan County. I would like for our representatives to do the right thing, remove the statue, not move it, that they voted to remove, and be the welcoming town we say we are. Thank you for your time. Let me read.
Next speaker is Jason Kent. Jason.
Jason, my family calls Queen Street home. Good evening. I want to begin by recognizing the work that each of you do in service to the community. I don't take lightly the weight of your responsibilities. You stepped into these roles to make Eatonton a better place for everyone in this county. That's why this process has been so disappointing. It wasn't a conversation with the public. It wasn't an open discussion about the town's future. It was a decision made in the dark, a decision without transparency, a decision without the people. Until the recent vote, the public had no clarity on whether or not the statue might move behind the cemetery, as the Human Relations Commission had suggested, or if it would move to Hollow Park, as the town council had unanimously voted. And then, without explaining why those options were dismissed, the town's choosing a path that cannot be justified, not by any standard of decency. A Confederate statue on the courthouse lawn is indefensible. It was wrong when it was erected. It was wrong when it was moved in the 60s. It is wrong today. The courthouse should stand for fairness and justice. The statue stands for something else. The idea that it's less offensive because it's going to be behind the courthouse where people park their cars, that's just an absurd justification. Black residents shouldn't have to walk past it and wonder if justice applies to them the same as everyone else. So I have to ask why. Why prioritize those who see the statue as something else and ignore its racist origins? Why prioritize them over the lived experiences of Black residents who know exactly what it represents? Why make this decision in the dark, against the public, against progress, against the values of a town that should be moving forward? Let's talk about history, because history is only as honest as those who tell it. The MOU highlights a few bizarre, kind of irrelevant things, like Joseph Hughes' statue. I don't know why it's even mentioned, but then it ignores that the Confederate statue is currently placed where the market house was, where enslaved Black people were rented as property. A Confederate, by the way, John Jacobs, who we just learned that his manuscript exists 160 years later, a couple years ago. So we're still learning. A Confederate statue next to a Confederate flag at the very site where Black men, women, and children were auctioned off. Do you really want to be leaders that ignore that history, who refuse to acknowledge it? For years, this town is hidden behind a lawsuit with no real legal standing. I told you that 2 years ago. Yet just last week, your town manager said, quote, "You're doing the best you can to move forward." Come on now. Moving forward doesn't look like this. Leadership does not look like this. This is a moment to do right, to make a decision that aligns with the people, the truth, and moving forward. I urge you to take it, put the statue into storage where it belongs until the real history can be properly told. Thank you.
John Moorhead. John? Thank you. Yes, I'm John Moorhead. I live on East Queen Street. I'm here to say some things that nobody else has said. I served on the Human Relations Commission also. No complaint about any of the people on the Human Relations Commission. They all have become among my best friends. But some of the speakers that were brought in told us a lot of things, most of which have been repeated within the last 30 minutes here, that in fact are not true. They're agendas and they're speculations. And so I had done primary research back into the Chowan Herald's starting in 1959, the county commissioner's minutes starting at the same time. What I've learned, and what we were told was that the monument was put up in the 1910s because we were racist. It was put in front of the old courthouse because we were racist. That it was moved to the foot of Broad Street because we were racists. Well, none of those things are true. The monuments in the counties had begun in the north. The American Battlefield Trust website says the majority of Union monuments were placed from 1880 to 1918. Confederate monuments were not as quick to spring up. Due to the shattered Southern economy, early monument funds were raised by wives, widows, and daughters of former Confederate soldiers. By holding book sales and tea parties, these ladies raised funds and started placing monuments. The majority of Confederate monuments were placed from 1900 to 1918 for that reason. At the Memorial Day celebrations every year, the American Legion, the bulletin lists on the back all the men who died in all the 20th century wars, including Korea and Vietnam. The total of those is 40. I would look back in the North Carolina records published by the state. I was able to count 47 men from Chowan County who died in the Civil War. I recently gave a PowerPoint program on this. I've been research on this for years. The reason it was put in on the courthouse green was the condition of the waterfront, east and west. At that time, it was railroad yards, docks, bars, and brothels. It was the only decent place in town.
when it was moved, it actually, the plans were, you can read about it, the issue of the first week in November of 1959 on the front page. Morley Jeffers Williams, who was from Ontario, was a landscape architecture professor at Harvard after getting his degree in landscape architecture and city planning from Harvard, had been hired to restore the gardens at Mount Vernon and at the White House and ultimately at Tryon Palace for the restoration of Tryon Palace. That's how the Edenton Women's Club found him. And he was the one who said, you need to put it as the focal point of the street, of the main street, to draw people downtown. After, with all the improvements to the waterfront being done with the Barker House, the municipal building, the library, the new sewer plant, and in preparation for the 300th anniversary of North Carolina in 1663. So I do think that this is an appropriate decision to put it behind the new courthouse, not a few feet from the Veterans Memorial, but in the middle of the block. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Our next speaker is Wayne Caskin. Mr. Caskin.
Hi, my name is Wayne Caskey. I live in Edenton on Open Street, just across the street. You'll see my home over there. My grandmother bought the property back in the 40s. So I've run this street before most of you were even born. I moved back into town about 3 years ago, and the first thing I ran into was this Confederate monument. And so I went down to see what it was all about, what's going on in town. And I made it a point to become friends with people on both sides of that issue, because I have relatives on one side, on the other side, and friends, and I wanted to find out what they were about. And I've had to take the stance, as the chief of police has, I have to remain neutral on this fact, on the monument, because I have friends on both sides of this issue. What surprised me was how each side perceived the other side. The one side that wants to remove that monument looked at the other side as a bunch of racists. And I got to know those people. And as a group as a whole, they are not racist. Are there racists among them? Sure there are. And then the ones that want to keep that statue looked at the other side that wants to remove it as a bunch of ungodly heathens. And I said, wait a minute. I know those people. I'm part of the racial reconciliation committee here in town. I said, they're not as a whole, as a group, they're not a bunch of ungodly heathens. Are there ungodly heathens among them? Sure there are. You just go to church every Sunday, you know that fact. When the council and commissioners came out with that memorandum, I read it and I went, wow, that looks like a pretty good compromise. I think this is kind of a good thing. Wrong, until I started talking to people on both sides and I started seeing, whoa, here and there. And I talked to one man, I said, hey, I'm confused. You need to explain something to me. You want that statue removed, yet you filed a lawsuit not to have it removed. What's going on with that? And so after we talked, he explained it to me. I understood where he was coming from on that issue. All I can do is I've made some notes about what things were said tonight. You have to come to the Racial Reconciliation Committee. All I can do is pray for this council, pray for the commissioner's office, because no matter what you do, there's people on both sides that are not going to be satisfied whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cass. Our next speaker is Susan Ingalls. Susan.
Good evening. I apologize that I was confused about our start time, but I appreciate the opportunity to share with you yet again that I think it is important that this monument be removed from its current location as soon as possible. I think the best plan for replacement of it is the first one that the Human Relations Commission considered, that pretty little piece of town-owned property adjoining Beaver Hill Cemetery, where actual Confederate soldiers are actually buried. My ancestor, Tristram Lowther Skinner, got up the first company of volunteers to march off to the Civil War. His first and second lieutenants were Bembreys. And that pretty little piece of property by Filbert's Creek and all of Beaver Hill Cemetery and beyond were then a Bembury plantation. It would be most fitting for that to be the site where we as a town and a county take responsibility for telling the story of the Civil War and its aftermath, acknowledging and memorializing the facts that our forebears depended on enslaved labor for maintaining their personal wealth and for maintaining the economy that sustained this region. They could not imagine otherwise, apparently, and fought a deadly war in defense of their brand of exploitation. Then years after the war, they used money that might have actually fed and clothed veterans to put up this statue as a statement of white supremacy. And then they moved it decades later to try to reiterate that message. In this day and age, we know better. We should not have a monument to the lost cause in the heart of our town.
Our next speaker is Laurie Edwards. Laurie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laurie Edwards. I'm the owner of Strawberry Hill, the granddaddy of houses here in Williamson. My house is nearly 2 centuries, my property is nearly 2 centuries older than that statue. I love Edenton and I love my house. I come from a military family. And I don't understand why you honor Confederate soldiers in such a big way, even more so than you honor the greatest generation. It pains me more that so many here refuse to hear the voices of those who are hurt by this statue. It's a complete lack of empathy from our historians. Those who are hurt represent more than half of our town. And we had a deal and everyone compromised. And I'm sure no one was happy, but that's what compromise is all about. And then someone backed out. And now here we go again, talking. Because that's the game, isn't it? Keep talking, keep delaying, and we never actually do anything. And I'm really tired of that game. So in protest, I'm painting the columns of my historic home black. And I'm standing in solidarity with those who feel the pain of the statue. And I want you to know, I feel your pain. Amen.
Thank you, Laurie, and that completes the public comment section of tonight's meeting. I would like to thank.
My name and 4 others were sent into the email. You told me you got the email.
Yes. Yeah, Mr. Toppin was on that email and was not included with the.
You
with the first group.
requested the email and we sent an email.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
did what
I
you
have
requested.
copies of that there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did
That's
Patrick
fine.
handle that?
He can speak.
Okay. Did you want to speak, Mr. Toppin?
Well, I'm gonna give my time to Steve Rader. I mean, I'd like to speak, but I'm not, you don't want to hear what I got to say right now.
I recall, if I could just chime in briefly, I recall that there was a request for representatives. Are these the representatives? Do we have a list? Maybe we just call out from the email?
They were informed they were going to speak on behalf. I have a copy of those 4 names, of which 2 have spoken.
Call out the other 2 who have not spoken that will request of them if.
Ron Toppin
they would like to
and
speak.
Stephen Rader.
Okay, those are the
Yes.
2 children. I mean, 2 citizens.
Yes.
Okay.
Steve prepared to be a 20-minute speaker. So that was on the email. Now I'm going by what your emails were.
Yeah.
No,
Through the attorney and Mr. Salem.
no, we're not
Okay,
agreeing
well,
to anybody
well,
speaking
that's what your email said.
20 minutes. We
You
did
take my
agree,
time.
we did agree that you could cede your time to another speaker.
Okay, he can have my time.
Okay. All right, Mr. Rader, please come forward.
Thank you. I'm Steve Rader. Have 2 ancestors who fought.
Excuse me, Mr. Rader, where's your address?
I'm a former past president of Beaufort County Historical Society. I live in Washington, North Carolina.
Washington, thank you, sir.
And descendant of 2 Confederate soldiers who, like most Confederate soldiers, did not own slaves and enlisted to fight to defend their homes against invasion. Like most soldiers.
Yeah.
And I would also like to remind you that in North Carolina, we have a statute to protect historic monuments. That statute, the bill that was passed to enact it was sponsored primarily by Representative Mike Speciale, who was a career Marine from Chicago, who recognized that Confederate veterans need to be honored too. So this is not just a bunch of Southerners. It's something that all military, or a lot of military people are concerned about. What is before you is a conflict between the cancel culture of the woke extreme left on one hand and American culture and history of everyday Americans on the other. It is a longtime tactic of totalitarians to attack and suppress history. George Orwell, one of the leading voices against totalitarianism, wrote, quote, "The most effective way to destroy people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history," end quote. Orwell wrote extensively on the totalitarian issue, also wrote that, quote, "From the totalitarian point of view, history is something to be created rather than learned," end quote. Canceling history and destroying monuments is what totalitarians do. It is what ISIS and Taliban have done in recent years and what the communists and Nazis have done in years past. I well recall from the years I worked in Eastern Europe, all of the empty pedestals of where historic monuments once sat before they were removed by communist governments. Now the far left in America is trying to do that to our history. The left's current national crusade against Confederate and other historic monuments is little different than Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution in Red China that destroyed much of their history. If you look at who started this national crusade against Confederate monuments that's moved on to other monuments, it largely started with BLM in 2020. BLM's founders and leaders have openly described themselves as trained Marxists. And that attack has moved on from Confederate monuments. It's moved on to former presidents, founding fathers, great explorers, even President Lincoln. All of these are now targets of the far left. While the core group of these monuments may be Marxists, they rely on the gullible to jump on board. These are people that Marx called fellow travelers and Lenin called useful idiots. The attack on monuments is being mounted around the world. The big agitations in France to take down monuments, President Macron, a man usually rather spineless, went on national TV to declare that no one would be erased from French history and no monuments would be taken down. I would ask that you have at least as much backbone as President Macron did and stand up to this the way he did. The far left's attack on Confederate monuments often tries to bring in the issue of slavery, but they ignore that many free blacks who fought for the South. The 1860 census showed that there were more free blacks in southern states than there were free blacks in northern states. And indeed, 5% of free blacks in the South owned slaves themselves. Some of those southern free blacks enlisted in the Confederate Army, and these monuments also are honoring them. The great abolitionist Frederick Douglass, himself a former slave, wrote in his Douglass Monthly in September 1861 that, quote, there are at the present moment, many colored men in the Confederate Army doing duty not only as cooks, servants, and laborers, but as real soldiers, having muskets on their shoulders, bullets in their pockets, ready to shoot down loyal troops and do all that soldiers may do to destroy the federal government and build up that of the traitors and rebels. There were such soldiers at Manassas. That's one of the greatest abolitionists of the period. They also ignore many contemporary observers who emphatically stated the war was not fought over slavery. One such observer was the most outspoken opponent of American slavery in England at the time, novelist Charles Dickens. In his book on his travels in America, Dickens devoted an entire chapter to denouncing slavery and slave owners. Yet when it came to the North's motivations for the war, Dickens declared that the North's claim to be fighting against slavery was, quote, specious humbug designed to conceal their desire for economic control of the southern states. Even Karl Marx himself wrote, quote, the war is not about slavery, it is a war of economic subjugation by the North against the South, end quote. For a thorough account on the real causes of the war, one should read the chapter on that subject in Sir Winston Churchill's book, The Great Republic. Historically, there are two particular things that occurred in 1861 which illustrate why thinking people did not believe the North's claim that the war was about slavery. Those were the Corwin Amendment and the Fremont Affair. The Corwin Amendment was promulgated to the states in March 1861 by supermajority vote of the U.S. Congress, at a time that the North had firm control of Congress because the first 7 southern states had already left. It was specifically endorsed by Lincoln in his first inaugural address. The Corwin Amendment would have enshrined slavery in the U.S. Constitution and made it impossible to abolish from the federal level. That was what the North did.
Mr. Rader, probably a good time to stop. That,
Good time.
Well, was that?
Was that was
6 minutes.
That was 6 minutes.
6 minutes.
Yes, sir, that was. Yeah, we gave you his seated minutes. So thank you.
If I could, before we move on, it's not a tradition, it's policy of the Board of Commissioners. Is there anyone in this room who wanted to speak to us that has not spoken yet? Gentleman in the blue shirt. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Bob. I live on Macedonia Road.
Last name, I'm sorry?
Annis.
Annis?
Annis.
Annis.
Like most people, we're recently transplants from the North. I grew up in Massachusetts. I'm also a proud veteran. I've served very proudly in the United States Army. And one of the things I'd like to figure out from this commission is, are we just kicking the can down the road? We have a monument. When I first got to Edenton, I fell in love with this town because it wasn't afraid of its history. It's a word that we use that today it's a dirty word. But the reality is we need to learn from our history. Without it, where are we? When I grew up, there were people that were trying to pull down crosses. There are military monuments that are up that people are trying to pull down because it signifies a god. What I'm afraid of what's happening here is this is just a start of something else. Because there are people that are afraid of history that want to take that monument down. What are you going to do when the guy comes that wants to take down your cross? What are you going to do when somebody comes around and says, what about that cannon that you got down the waterfront? What are you going to do then? You'll never satisfy everybody. there has to be a compromise. That's just the reality. And what I'm afraid of as a taxpayer is I'm gonna fund to move that monument once again, and then will that be the end of it? Or is there gonna be another long protracted battle to try and get that removed again? But more importantly, what I'm afraid of is what happens when they come after my cross? What happens when they come after my flag? Because remember, no, it's not, give me a break, it's reality.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. We're gonna start. You're the last speaker, I think. And whoever made that comment, that was the first comment we've had from the audience. We're not gonna have any comments. We did not interrupt any of the other speakers. And I was about to thank all of y'all for that. So please proceed.
So anyway, just in closing, to me, it's one of the things with history, you have to learn from history. If you remove everything that reminds you of a past, you'll never learn from. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone for expressing your thoughts tonight. Most importantly, also would like to thank you for the civil manner in which you expressed your thoughts, and also thank you for the civil manner in which you received the thoughts of others whom you may disagree with. At this point in time, we move to the new monument memorandum of understanding. As we stated earlier tonight, the triggering event of the previous November 25th, 2024 memorandum of understanding was the entry of a consent judgment. We've already explained why that consent judgment is not forthcoming, but the agreement was for the monument to be moved within 30 days of the entry of that consent judgment. The new memorandum of understanding changes that triggering event and states that within 30 days of the dismissal or other final adjudication of the civil action, file number 22 CBS 000198-200, Chowan County Superior Court, United Daughters of the Confederacy versus the Town of Edenton, thus dissolving and removing the existing restraining order, and in all respect concludes the case. That will now be the triggering event, at which time within 30 days of that triggering event, the town will remove at its expense a Confederate monument to include the bronze statue, the pedestal, the tripartite carved stone shaft, the multi-tiered carved stone base, its existing foundation, surrounding brick square, 4 flag poles, and ground lighting from its present location to the location owned by Chowan County, located behind the Chowan County Courthouse and the open space between the Chowan County Detention Center and the Veterans Memorial as identified on Exhibit A attached to the proposed new memorandum of agreement. The way our rules of procedure go, before we conduct a discussion on any particular issue, we will need a motion and second, and then I'll open the floor for discussion by town council. So do I have a motion to enter into the new memorandum of understanding and agreement?
Second.
Okay. We've got a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Bond and a second by Councilman Miller. Any discussion over and beyond what we've already heard from our citizens? Okay, there being none, I will call a vote. All in favor of the town entering into the memorandum of understanding and agreement with Chowan County, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Chairman Kirby.
Thank you, sir. For the Board of Commissioners, it would be in order that we have a motion to consider the MOU. Motion to consider is made. Now it's in order for us to have discussion. Commissioners?
Well, I'd like to say that I'm not in a position to vote yea or nay at the present time. I would like to think that this Board of Commissioners, we really need to think hard and have a good discussion with our My reservations are, if we take this monument, then we are stuck with any court cases coming up and the costs associated with that and all the other rigmarole that we've been through. So my reservation is that be cautious to make sure that we're going down the right road.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments?
I concur with Vice Chair. I think the best study and some council have.
Thank you.
A lot of discussion we need to do, right?
Right.
I agree.
Very well, very well. It's a consensus here, it seems. I think in the public forum that we're in now, we really need to consider, however, in this public forum, so that we are able to indicate, and I think it's true that we want to indicate to the public that we've heard their comments and are considering their comments. I do note the various people who spoke. One thing that jumped out at me is a lot of people, there were several people who want to put the monument in storage. And I don't think that's something that is authorized under general statutes. People who want to put it at Beaver Hill Cemetery, not authorized by the general statutes. The general statutes have said you can't do that. People who want to put it at Beaver Hill Cemetery, general statute says specifically you can't put it in the cemetery. So we've got that consideration. Let me see here. I wrote a bunch of them down, so I'm trying to share a meeting too, so help me out, guys. We've got, of course, the literature, the verbiage of the memorandum of understanding. I think we need to go through the memorandum at least so that we need to go through the memorandum.
So I think if I could just.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
A little bit. So in regards to the Board of Commissioners tonight, I'm obviously here to assist you in your meeting, just like I do any other meeting. And so in regards to what you're here for under this agenda item, you have a couple of options. One, the town has proposed an MOU to you, which is attached to the agenda package for tonight. And that I believe the board saw in the agenda packet before we arrived here tonight. So at this juncture, the town council has approved that memorandum, and you can, one, take under consideration to approve the memorandum as presented. You can request changes to the memorandum, and then those changes can go back to the town council for consideration if you'd like to see a modification. You can vote to not move forward with the memorandum at this time, or you can vote to take some other action, then a whole new memorandum and give some instruction about how you'd like that drafted. So in regards to where you go tonight, I know you guys said you have a lot of questions and things you want to consider. And so I think that the chair needs some direction about which direction you want to go. For procedural purposes, we do have a motion on the floor to consider, and maybe, I didn't catch who made that motion. Okay, so generally in our procedure, we don't need a motion to consider. To withdraw that motion, this is the agenda item the board is considering, and then we would be lined up for a motion to take place in one of those options that I just described to you. So I certainly don't want to prevent any discussion.
No, ma'am, I understand totally. You're providing legal guidance. That's what you're supposed to do.
Well, I'll withdraw my motion with a comment. Okay. I do believe, based on everything that's been said, a compromise is going to be critical. This has been what's considered viable. With that said, I do believe we have to review details. So I withdraw my.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So now you're on the agenda item, which is you are now to be presented with a memorandum, and that is for the board's consideration. And I think that the chair was calling for discussion and comment on that, unless the board has a motion that they're ready to make at this time. If not, it'd be appropriate to work with further discussion.
Right. Any further discussion? Is there a motion?
Make a motion for our board to study this.
Well,
I mean,
it's your motion.
We should
not
take, we
mine.
should
table this until we have had time to study
to
this.
thoroughly review and discuss with council the ramifications.
That's my motion.
Can I-
We don't need a second. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make sure I got the motion right. The motion is to table consideration to allow commissioners to review. I guess that was gonna be my next question, so then maybe you will not, is you're asking to table it, so you sure there's a table and you're asking for a date certain, are you asking to table and come back to a joint session? Are you asking to table and put it on a county agenda only, or what is it? I guess I need to understand.
The town's already voted.
They've already voted, so I think it's just for us to decide and then we'll present back.
Can you speak on that one more time, so you guys discuss?
Talk that way.
I would say that we will take it back to county and study it. The town's already made their vote, and then we will present it back to the town.
Okay, so your motion is to table this to a later Chowan County Board of Commissioners meeting, where the county can have further discussion in an open session to discuss this. That's a date is up to you.
Next meeting is March the 3rd.
So we'll do
It would be, it would be,
we can have.
We would, the proposal, we don't need to make a motion with this, but the proposal would be at our March 3rd meeting, we place this on the agenda for discussion. Make a
We
motion.
just changed with this one.
That's in the motion. That's in the motion.
All right, so we've got
So
the date
Suzanne,
for
will
that.
you restate the motion just so the board and everyone can hear exactly what the motion is? So is your amended motion to table consideration of the MOU until the March 3rd County Commissioners meeting?
Motion is made. Any further discussion?
Well, I have one thing to say, which would be that I really enjoyed hearing all the different points of view from people who I know personally and some people I've never met. I think both sides make good arguments. I mean, that's a real conundrum. So I just want to say that this was a good exercise, and I hope everybody got a lot out of it. I did. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. That was unanimous. Thank you very much. I guess,
And I would, before we adjourn, I would just ask the county to notify us of the results of
Yes,
that
sir.
meeting.
Absolutely.
And I would ask our town manager to place this as an agenda item on our March first meeting of the month, March 11th. Just ask that be an agenda item at that time.
very well.
So Mayor, I have a question if you don't mind. Do you feel it'll be fitting for us to have another joint session to have open dialogue between both the county and the town about any reservations or concern that you may have? That way we can kind of come to a consensus before moving forward. I feel like that'll be fitting to do so, versus having these separate meetings and, invite the public so, they can kind of hear it as well. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not mad at the decision at all. I wasn't privy to this until, I don't know, whenever it was first presented not too long ago. So I didn't have enough time to kind of digest it myself until here recently. So I would love for us to have open dialogue with each other about any concerns that you guys may have. That way we can kind of move forward from there.
And I agree with that. And what I recommend is, once you guys meet and communicate back to us what your position is, we'll discuss that. We need the opportunity to discuss that as a separate body ourselves. Then with hopefully the goal of coming back and having a joint meeting so that we can look each other in the eye and talk about it.
Okay, we can dialogue.
Is that good?
Good, fair enough.
What you were talking
Yes,
about?
it
Been
is. Thank you.
accused of dialoguing too much. We can always do some more. Right?
Okay, at this point in time, the next agenda item is adjournment from the town council side. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
I got a motion. Do I have a second? I got a motion with numerous seconds. All in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed?
Mr. Mayor.
All right, we're still in session. We're still in session, ma'am.
Most to adjourn.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? First,
I still would like to say one thing to the mayor.